my name's Harry, and this right here is my MK3 Golf GTI project car. I've had it now for a little over a year. I picked it up in Christmas 2023. I say picked it up, truthfully I dragged it home. Thank you Dad for helping me with that, because it was a bit of a tall order. Anyway, and now here it rests. I say rest because truthfully, like most project cars, it does in fact float on jack stands. And yeah, by that you should probably be able to tell, although the wording project car might make it really obvious to most of you, that this thing currently is definitely not roadworthy. Fortunately the engine now runs, and that was a whole thing, and there's actually a lot more to all of that work that I've done so far. So I'm now going to cut to that and kind of, yeah, update you guys to where I'm at. Right, so this is quite literally, yeah, this is literally how I first saw the GTI. Kind of laid up on, yeah, some guy's front driveway with a cover on it. Now, I actually saw it first, I think like way back in 2018, 2019. At the time, I was just doing my A-levels and things. Even then, I was really into cars, and I kind of saw it and thought, oh, that, you know, that's kind of interesting. Like, clearly it's something a bit different. You know, it's got some sporty wheels on it, and it's got cover chucked on it. And I never really thought much more about it than that, really. That was kind of it. And then fast forward a load of years into 2023. At this point, I was really looking for a project car of some kind, and I remembered this sort of local car near me, whatever it was, chucked underneath the cover. Anyway, so I went over there. I actually ended up speaking to the owner's wife. She was really helpful and gave me his number. I sent him a text, and a few weeks later, he agreed for me to come round and have a look at it. So we pulled the cover off together. I kind of remember it was a pretty funny moment, as he told me that he actually hadn't had the cover off the car in about 3 years. So it had been a while, and it was definitely pretty mouldy in there. But sure enough, in front of me was a MK3 Golf GTI with only 102,000 miles, so I thought, you know, this is actually pretty low for a 90s car. And probably the biggest swinger for me, arguably, is the fact it was finished in dragon green, which I'll admit is probably one of my favourite colours on a car. I think this is largely due to the fact my mate has a pretty stunning Corrado in it, but also in the sun, it just looks really nice. You just can't really beat it for a green, I think. Anyway, I looked around the car and I kind of noticed it had a few mods and things. At the time, I wasn't super aware on MK3 mods and stuff, so the header quads, the Votech spoiler, things like that, which are actually quite desirable now for people who like MK3s, kind of went straight over my head. Anyway, we had a bit more of a chat. I looked around. To me, I actually thought the car didn't look too bad from what I could see. Obviously, it had been sat a while and it was going to need recommissioning, but in terms of rust, I thought, you know, it's not too bad. I'm sure many MK3 owners will probably relate to that fact of thinking it's not too bad until you pull the body kit off, and that's when the real fun starts. Anyway, so I made the owner an offer, and he said he was going to have a bit of a think about it. I think mentally he was still in the process of really letting go of the car. He had obviously made a lot of memories with it, and so, you know, for anyone who's into cars, it's kind of a lot to like let go of that, sometimes more so than the physical thing itself. Anyway, so a few weeks went by, and I got a call. At the time I was actually having a roast with my mate in a local pub, and yeah, he essentially accepted my offer, and so then the process begun of me and my dad going to collect it. And funnily enough, of all the days we could have done it, we decided to collect it on the day before Christmas Eve. So yeah, he was actually away at the time on holiday, and a huge thank you to him because he actually trusted me, and so he left the keys in the car and I came and collected it and told me that we would sort out the paperwork and payment in the new year, which was really nice of him. Anyway, so me and my dad sort of began the process of trying to free this thing up to get it ready to tow home. Of course, immediately we found an issue. It would be a project car if we didn't. The rear brakes were completely seized, probably due to the fact the handbrake had been up the whole time, so they were absolutely locked on. I actually pulled the wheels off and I did my best to try and free them up, but it just wasn't happening. They were completely welded in. So we kind of made the brave decision to actually end up dragging the car, which actually paid off. Obviously most people say don't do this, but fortunately the car really wasn't that far from me, and we managed to get it into neutral, so I knew I wasn't going to hurt the gearbox. And anyways, the tyres were, yeah, about 2007 and Chinese, so I really wasn't worried about scrapping them too much. Anyway, here's pulling it home. This is how you move a Golf GTI. It's been sat for 9 years. I've left some fairly big 11s, but it'll be alright. Ooh, that feels Anyway, me and my friends proceeded to start washing it. It was pretty grim. Obviously, being outside for 10 plus years, it was growing a steady layer of greenery on it. But it actually cleaned up really well. I was quite surprised at how much of the paint was actually in pretty good condition, really. Except for the bonnet, which was completely matte green. The lacquer has just completely deleted itself. Apparently this is quite common with Dragon Green, or so I've heard. The interior as well, like, it really came up quite well and all the mould came off. The engine though, that actually did look like a fossil, so yeah.
Oh dear.
Tried to get the car to start, but it just wasn't happening. Eventually I realised the fuel pump wasn't cutting in. Anyway, this is the state of the fuel pump. Cleaned out the fuel tank and ended up getting my mate Charlie round to see if we get the GTI to run. I think the next video explains Charlie pretty well, so enjoy. After throwing in a new fuel pump as well, somehow, miraculously, it actually did run. Although not for very long, Yeah, I ended up finding a lovely chocolate milkshake in my expansion tank. I assumed that my head gasket had failed at the time, and I was quite frustrated, so I decided to call it an evening. Charlie had actually just picked up an M3 Evo, so we went out in that and joined my mate in his S14. And yeah, it was actually a pretty fun evening after kind of an annoying day.
Give us a little round pass. I decided to strip everything back and sort of diagnose the issue because I knew that there was stuff we were going to have to replace anyway. So doing all of this just makes my life a bit easier, and it's kind of part of everything anyway because I want to clean up things and I need new wings anyway. So this is kind of where we're at now. I have pulled the bumper, the wings, I'm pulling the headlights, although this clip on this helicord is proving to be a little bit tight. And I've also pulled out the oil cooler, and then the rad's coming out because that's just knackered, to be honest. Yeah, I've got the quads off now, nice and safe. And yeah, definitely be putting these away, safekeeping. Pulled the wings off. I've got a much better idea of what the sort of the arches are looking like. Unfortunately, all of this is really quite solid, it's just surface rust. So it's definitely a relief. And again, the same with this, and the inside of this turret is nice. Obviously this is kind of a big place for Mark IIIs to rot out. Unfortunately this side seems to have survived pretty well. Again, running gear is not great, but we will check all of this. I'm going to see if these discs are intolerant still, in which case we'll keep them and clean them up a bit. Probably going to get new pads. The lines probably also need to go, and a few other bits, but yeah, looking not too bad. It's time to pull this crash bar off, so let's do that. A big thank you to Harry and Devon who went over this with a machine polish very quickly, to be fair, because this panel actually, the rear quarter came up really well in comparison to sort of the doors and stuff. So it'll be nice to see how this comes up fully when we do the whole car with some serious compounds and stuff. As I get further into this car, finding things like an old subwoofer ground cable, it must have lived an interesting life in the day. So the plan now is to pull the head off of the 8 valve, do the head gasket and all the other related jobs, and give everything a bit of a clean up and a bit of paint, just make things a bit nicer. And yeah, hopefully we'll have a running engine again. Well, it was running, and then we'll have another running engine again. But yeah, shouldn't be too bad. Of course, going to check the head for any cracks and warping. Hopefully that will all be okay and be good to go back on. So yeah. Yeah boy, look at them cams. Not too bad.
I then pulled the head off the 8 valve. I was really happy that the bores and things looked really healthy. I pulled the camshaft and the tappets out, and again, that all looked really good, very little wear, really. I cleaned the head up, and then I got it sent off to get it skimmed and checked. Then finally a load of parts turned up so I could finally kind of crack on. I cleaned the sump out because obviously God knows what mixed in there. I cleaned up the pickup too, and in the new parts was also a new air filter because that was basically just gone. This is the crank position sensor. As you can see, it's definitely seen better days, so I fitted a new one. It probably explains why the car just wasn't running very well. I painted up my intake manifold and the valve cover. A big thank you to my mate Harvey, who blasted all of this stuff for me before painting. It really made the finish come up super well. Saw in the details sometimes. I was pretty happy with that. I also put on a brand new oil cooler and oil filter. I built the head back up, all to spec, all torqued down and marked up so I could make sure there was no slip on the bolts. I also put in a new camshaft seal, again torquing more pulleys up and things, and a brand new OE Plus steel head gasket. The head finally went back on. The stretch bolts was definitely interesting. It's the first time I've ever done this, so the noise was definitely something a bit new to get used to. I fitted a brand new water pump and thermostat too. Then finally the head was back on, and I was pretty happy with the result, to be honest. It looked a lot better than when I first opened the bonnet up and saw that absolute fossil of an engine. I got the engine timed up and the belt on, and at that point it was time for a first start. I then refitted the cooling system so I could give the engine a bit of a rev without obviously it overheating or anything. At this point I pretty much decided to see if the car would actually drive in gear, which amazingly it did. Looking back on it now, these photos are pretty special. I just got the car driving around the garden, and as an added bonus my cat decided to sit on the roof. A pretty cool memory. I then started to cut out the inevitable rust on the Golf, starting with where these floor bungs used to be. This was actually my first time ever welding on a car and fabricating, and I was actually really happy with the result. I was then in Ireland for a bit, and even then the Mark III somehow managed to still haunt me. Once I got back, what followed was a pretty typical summer for anyone who's into cars. Since summer I've done a few other bits on the GTI. One of the big ones has been dropping the rear axle and completely stripping it down for a full rebuild. I actually wheel-wheeled the entire thing for a good 4 hours, and then I used some Hydrate 80 rust converter, and I gave it 2 coats of that, and then finally I finished it off with 2 coats of black metal paint. I'm actually really happy with how that came out, so it's going to be really nice once that's all back together and fully refreshed. So that is a complete catch-up done on the GTI. So now you're completely up to speed with me and the project and where we're at with it. A massive thank you if you have watched this far. It really does mean a lot. If you feel like you want to like or subscribe, please, that would be amazing. And also, if you've got any ideas or suggestions for videos, please comment down below. The portrait shots and stuff in this weren't ideal, I know, but I was trying to use sort of my old phone footage to tell the whole story. Anyway, yeah guys, I really hope you enjoyed that, and yeah, I'll catch you on the next one.